The grand lobby shimmered under the golden chandeliers, every step echoing in the cavernous space lined with marble and rare silks. The billionaire sheikh entered with a presence that commanded silence, a man carved from power and danger. Yet, amid the luxury that embraced him like an old throne, his gaze froze on a figure he never expected to see again. She was bent over a cart, her hands moving with practiced grace, gathering dust and forgotten crumbs, a woman reduced to the shadows of his past. The sheen of her once vibrant dress was gone, replaced by the simple uniform of a cleaner. But her eyes, those piercing eyes, still bore into his soul with the same intensity he remembered. Beside her, a little girl stood quietly, clutching a tattered doll. Her eyes, sharp and haunting, mirrored the woman's exactly, like twin flames flickering in the dim light. The sight struck the sheikh deeper than any sword. Curiosity and something dangerously close to hope surged beneath his cold pride. His heart hammered against the cage of his ribs, torn between the ice of his reputation and the warmth of a past love ignited anew. He watched her rise, brushing hair away from her face, the weight of unspoken stories settling between them like a silent storm. She met his gaze with steady dignity, eyes not begging, only challenging. The gulf between their worlds yawned wide, but her strength, quiet and unyielding, filled the chasm with fragile courage. For a heartbeat, time suspended. Their eyes locked, each glance a conversation of regrets, secrets, and suppressed desires. The little girl looked up, sensing the unspoken tension, and suddenly their bond, the mystery wrapped in those shared eyes, threatened to shatter the fortress of distance the sheikh had built around himself. A flicker of recognition stirred, an ache he thought buried. The child could only mean one thing. The sheikh's mind raced, fragments of memories colliding with an undeniable truth too long denied. His breath caught. The luxury around him faded into a blur of gold and silence. He stepped forward, voice barely above a whisper. "Is she?" But before the words could fully escape, the woman's expression hardened, a wall rising between them, a secret kept safe by broken promises. The billionaire sheikh, once untouchable, now stood vulnerable in the heart of opulence, confronted with the past he thought he had abandoned, and the fragile girl who might rewrite his future. Subscribe, leave a like, and comment below if you feel the weight of their story. Join us as the billionaire sheikh's world unravels. Will love conquer all, or will secrets keep them apart? Follow the journey unfolding in Chapter 2. The billionaire sheikh's voice trembled, barely a breath lost in the vastness of the golden lobby. Is she mine? The question hung heavy, fragile as glass poised to shatter. The woman's eyes flickered with a sudden steel, a barricade slammed shut over years of hidden pain. Her hands tightened around the cart, knuckles whitening. "You don't dare," she said softly, but there was an edge sharp enough to cut through the opulence surrounding them. A few steps away, the little girl shifted, clutching her worn doll closer, eyes wide and unblinking. The chill in the air was not from the marble floors or the distant fountains echoing faintly in the hall. but from the weight of 1,000 unspoken words, filling the space between the billionaire and the woman who had once been his world. The sheikh swallowed hard, feeling the burn of vulnerability creeping into the frozen fortress he'd built around his heart. A lifetime of power and control offered no shield against the raw eruption of emotions that surged now. Nostalgia, regret, fear, and a crackling thread of hope he thought long extinguished. "Why are you here?" His voice was low, a gruff whisper barely more than the scratching of silk against stone. She met his gaze steadily, unwavering. "I work here. It's a chance, a way to exist unseen," she said, the weight of 1,000 sacrifices folded into the simple sentence. "This city doesn't care for fallen princesses, Sheikh. It only knows kingdoms built on power and gold." He took a step closer, everything inside him resisting the familiar pull. "You left without a word, left me to believe—" "You left first," she interrupted, voice breaking for the barest moment before regaining its iron composure. "You abandoned promises like they were nothing." A sharp tension sliced through the air. The memories, bright and painful, ricocheted behind their locked gazes. Nights of whispered dreams, plans forged with youth's reckless passion, and the cruel unraveling that none in his circle spoke about. The little girl tugged at the hem of the woman's dress. For the briefest moment, the sheikh's stern gaze softened as he knelt down, lowering himself to the child's eye level. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. The child's eyes glimmered with a cautious spark. The same fierce light he saw reflected in the woman's. "Layla," the girl whispered. Layla. The name wrapped around his heart like a fragile thread, sinking deeper than any wound. He reached out tentatively, hand trembling with the weight of possibility. Before his fingers could brush hers, the woman pulled the child back, shielded her fiercely, as though protecting a treasure too precious for this cruel world. "Do not mistake kindness for weakness, Sheikh," she said sharply, eyes narrowing. "I will not ask for your favors, nor will I allow Layla to be drawn into that world, the world you live in, but can never truly belong to." Her words struck him like a tempest, both a warning and a lament. He rose slowly, the gilded walls suddenly feeling less like sanctuary and more like a cage. His mind raced, with questions born from a past he didn't dare confront before. How could she be here? Why had no one told him? And most tormenting, was Layla truly his daughter? Behind the veil of wealth and power, his heart hammered wildly, terrified of what lay beneath, yet desperate for truth. A sudden bustle drew their attention. Palace guards, formally dressed, began to converge nearby. Whispers followed their approach. News traveled fast in a place where secrets were currency. The woman straightened, pushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear, eyes burning with fierce determination. "The less they see, the better," she muttered. The sheikh's gaze faltered. The luxurious world he commanded suddenly seemed alien and cold. He glanced briefly at the elaborate tapestry adorning the wall, bright threads weaving tales of glory and conquest, but none told a story as fragile or as urgent as this one. He stepped forward again, voice tinier now, almost pleading. "Let me be part of her life." Anger flared in her eyes like a sudden storm. "You abandoned us. You shattered our world. You have no right. His chest tightened with the weight of his guilt, but beneath it, a fierce resolve blazed to redeem what was lost, to protect what he had failed to see before. The past cannot be changed, he said quietly. But the future, if you let me, maybe I can help. Her expression wavered, a flicker of vulnerability slipping through the hardened exterior. Then she looked down at Layla, a silent promise passing from mother to father, an unspoken pact forged in pain and hope. Suddenly, the palace doors burst open, and a dark silhouette stood. Framed against the blinding light, a man whose presence carved tension into the very air. A trusted advisor? An enemy in disguise? The Sheikh's jaw clenched as recognition flickered in his eyes. This new arrival's gaze locked onto the woman and child with something more than curiosity, something dangerous. Your secrets won't stay buried much longer, Sheikh. The man's voice was cold, deliberate. The woman stepped back protectively, eyes wide. Layla gripped her hand tightly, sensing the undercurrent of menace. The Sheikh felt a surge of protective fierceness rise. This wasn't just a reunion now. It was a battlefield. He turned to the woman, voice low but resolute. We face this together. No more running from shadows. Her eyes met his, a storm of emotions swirling. Fear, defiance, hope. Outside the shimmering grand lobby, the desert wind howled, carrying whispers of past sins and future battles. In that moment, the billionaire sheikh realized that what he thought was lost forever was pulling him back. Not just a child, not just a woman, but the fragile thread of redemption that might yet bind them in a world torn between gold and blood. And as the stranger took a step closer, a threat unveiled in his cold smile. A new chapter of their story began, one where power, secrets, and love would collide in an explosion no one could foresee. The man's cold smile cut through the thick air of the grand lobby as the stranger took another step forward, the glint in his eyes hinting at a darkness that had been festering far beyond the gleaming walls. The billionaire sheikh's jaw tightened, muscles coiling beneath the impeccable fabric of his tailored suit. Every ounce of his formidable will rose like a roaring tide, yet beneath it, a fragile thread of fear clung stubbornly to the edges of his composure. The woman stood protectively before Layla, her small frame a living shield, her eyes sharp as daggers. The little girl's grip on her doll tightened, her usually steady breathing shallow and quick. For a moment, time seemed to fracture. Each heartbeat thundered louder than the crystal chandeliers above. The opulence around them, the marble gleaming, the golden fixtures, felt distant, hollow, more cage than sanctuary. The sheikh's world was collapsing in on itself. Why are you here, Kareem? The sheikh's voice was low, slicing through the tension like a blade. He did not flinch, though every instinct screamed caution. The stranger smirked, stepping fully into the light, revealing a face refined yet hardened by ambition and betrayal. Isn't it obvious? To remind you of the debts you've ignored. Kareem's eyes flicked toward the woman and child, his voice dropping. No favors can save you now. The billionaire Sheikh's eyes darted to the woman. Her jaw clenched. Silent defiance radiated from her every movement. She glanced down at Layla, who shifted closer to her side, her wide eyes searching the faces of the powerful men before her. "I won't let you drag us back into your games," the woman said coldly. "Not this time." Kareem's grin twisted broader, enjoying the tension he wove. "You think you've escaped the past? The debts of blood and silence don't just vanish." His gaze settled on the sheikh. "Especially when a daughter's future hangs in the balance." The words hung there, venomous and sharp. The sheikh's chest tightened, the reality crashing harder than any desert storm. This was war, not fought with swords, but with secrets, influence, and the unbreakable will of a man guarding his fragile hope. Enough. The sheikh's voice rose sharply, commanding the echoed space to still. His eyes locked with Kareem's, fury blazing. "Leave her and Layla out of this, whatever your motives." "They're my business as much as yours," Kareem interrupted, stepping closer as the palace doors swung open wider behind him. Shadows poured in, a subtle warning that the game was far from over. The woman inhaled deeply, her shoulders squared. "We don't need your protection," she whispered to the sheikh. Yet the tremor in her voice betrayed her doubt. "But if you want to fight beside us for once." For the first time, the sheikh saw cracks in her iron facade, a fragile invitation wrapped in guarded hope. His world had been a fortress of control. But here, with her and with Layla, the rules were rewriting themselves. The stakes were no longer gold or power, but love and survival. Kareem's eyes narrowed as he sensed the shift, the potential alliance threatening to unravel his carefully laid plans. "You think this changes anything?" His voice lowered to a dangerous growl. "The palace whispers, Sheikh. Your secrets aren't buried forever, and soon they'll decide who wins and who falls." The billionaire Sheikh's breath hitched as a torrent of memories flooded his mind. Broken promises, nights lost to regret, and a love he had fought forever out of reach. He stepped forward, closing the distance between past pain and future hope. "Then let it come," he said, voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "Because I won't lose them again. Not to you, not to my mistakes." The woman's eyes searched his face, a tempest of emotions swirling, fear, skepticism, but beneath it all, a flicker of trust. She nodded slightly, signaling a fragile truce. Layla stepped closer, her small hand slipping into the sheikh's. The warmth of that touch shattered the cold veneers around him. Outside, beyond the gilded palace, the desert wind howled, carrying whispers of old betrayals and new battles. Yet within these walls, a different kind of war was beginning. A fight for redemption, for love, and for the family the sheikh had never dared to claim. As Kareem's smirk darkened, he pulled something from inside his coat, a slim envelope, sealed with a crimson mark that pulsed like a warning. "This," he said, voice thick with menace, "is the key to everything you thought was buried. Open it, Sheikh, and your world will burn." The Sheikh's hands trembled as he took the envelope. the weight of its promise heavier than any jewel in his vast collection. His eyes met the woman's once more. This time, a silent vow passed between them. No matter the shadows that threatened, they would face the storm together. In that suspended moment, as the golden light flickered off the polished marble and the desert sun dipped low beyond the horizon, the billionaire sheikh knew his life had changed forever. The past was no longer just a memory. It was a weapon aimed straight at his heart, and the war for their future was just beginning. The crimson seal on the envelope seemed to pulse like a heartbeat in the billionaire sheikh's trembling hands. His gaze locked on Karim, whose cold smile had carved a wound deeper than any blade could. The grand lobby's golden opulence felt suddenly suffocating. Shadows creeping along the marble floors, like creeping doubts bleeding into the heart of his sanctuary. Layla tightened her small fingers around her mother's hand, sensing the tension as a fragile thread stretched taut between them all. The woman's eyes, sharp and unwavering, flicked between the stranger and the sheikh, a silent warning etched in every line of her face. Yet beneath her steel walls, the faintest tremor betrayed a tempest of fear. "Open it," Karim taunted, stepping closer, his voice a venomous whisper that slithered through the cavernous space. "See for yourself. What skeletons you've buried, Sheikh. The truth is waiting to burn your world to ashes." A fragile silence fell, broken only by the distant trickle of water from a fountain somewhere beyond the hall. The sheikh's fingers hesitated, the weight of possibility heavier than all his wealth combined. Sweat dampened the inside of his sleeves, the cold marble pressing harshly beneath his palms, as if the very stones demanded courage he feared he lacked. With a breath barely audible, he broke the crimson seal. Inside lay a single photograph. The edges curled, worn with age, but the image was sharp. Photographed in a hurried but deliberate moment. It showed a man and a woman, their expressions strained, shadows hovering behind their smiles. The sheikh's breath caught as realization clawed its way up his spine. The woman was the same as the cleaner before him, but standing beside her was another figure, a man, dark and familiar. An undeniable pulse of anger erupted inside him, suffused with grief. Memories he had buried rushed forth, the promises betrayed, the nights he had stolen away, the lies they had both spun to survive. The photograph was a message, a relic of a past he'd hoped never to face. "Why bring this now?" His voice cracked, tempered with cold fury. Karim's grin deepened, because some debts demand repayment, and some secrets refuse to stay hidden. You thought your empire was built on stones, but it's built on lies, and lies always break. The woman stepped forward, her face a battleground between defiance and exhaustion. "You can't use us as pawns anymore, Karim. Layla isn't part of your game." Karim's gaze, sharpened, dangerous. "She's part of history, your history, Sheikh, and history always finds a way to catch up." The billionaire's chest tightened, the words sharpening the cuts in his soul. He looked down at Layla, whose wide eyes brimmed with confusion and silent pleading. His mind fractured between protector and man. Could he shield her from the storm? Or was this the beginning of an irrevocable collapse? He folded the photograph carefully, slipping it into his pocket. This relentless sun. His influence was vast. This was no mere threat, but an orchestrated siege against the fragile family forming here. The billionaire Sheikh's instinct surged. The power he wielded, formidable, cold, and ruthless, was now a double-edged blade. Could it defend the precious light that flickered in front of him? Or would it extinguish the very hope it sought to protect? "I won't let the past destroy our future," he said, eyes blazing into Kareem's with unyielding fire. "But this war won't be yours to command." Kareem laughed, a low, chilling sound that echoed through the vast hall. "We'll see, Sheikh. The desert hides many secrets, but nothing stays buried forever." The woman reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from Layla's face, a tender yet fierce gesture. "We must be ready. Whatever comes next, we face it together." For the first time in a long while, the billionaire Sheikh allowed himself to reach for her hand, a quiet surrender to the fragile bond knitting them, past wounds knitting into newfound strength. Outside, the desert wind howled, relentless and unforgiving. But inside, beneath the gilded ceilings and the echoing chandeliers, a different tempest was brewing, one woven from shadows of betrayal, the heat of unquenched desire, and the burning hope of redemption. As Kareem stepped back, eyes glinting with menace, the Sheikh's heart thundered, a battle cry veiled in silk and steel. Because in this game of power and passion, only one truth prevailed. The past was never truly gone, and the war for their souls had only just begun. And then as the palace doors groaned shut behind the guards, a whispered sound echoed, a soft, unmistakable melody. Layla's laughter light and pure, a fragile beacon against the gathering storm. A storm that would either destroy them or bind them forever. The billionaire Sheikh stood motionless, the photograph folded carefully in his palm, as the weight of its revelation pressed down like a desert sun, scorching the skin. Kareem's cold gaze bore into him, a predator, savoring the moment before the strike, while the woman's fierce protectiveness flickered in her eyes, shielding Layla like a precious ember against the freezing winds of betrayal. The grand lobby, once a sanctuary of glittering gold and whispered secrets, now felt like a battlefield marked by tentative alliances and unspoken threats. The distant echo of water trickling from fountains barely pierced the heavy silence, broken only by the slow, deliberate footsteps of palace guards weaving through. The marble corridors, their presence an unyielding reminder of the dangers lurking just beyond the gilded walls. "Why now, Kareem?" the Sheikh demanded, voice steady, though every muscle in his body bristled with tension. "What game are you playing that drags my past back into the light like a vulture circling a carcass?" Kareem's grin deepened, the lines of his sharp face tightening with cruel amusement. "You live in a world of illusions, Sheikh. Power built on lies is a house of sand. That photograph is merely the beginning. I hold truths that will shatter every fortress you've raised." The woman's hand tightened on Layla's smaller one, her knuckles whitening as she angled herself between the men. "You'll find no pawn here, Kareem. Not this time. Layla is not collateral for your endless vendettas." "Ah, But she is the nexus, Kareem shot back smoothly, taking a step forward, his eyes narrowing. The key to everything, and the reason your carefully crafted empire is trembling. The Sheikh's chest constricted, a searing ache spreading beneath the tailored fabric of his jacket. Emotions warred beneath his stoic facade, a tempest of regret, love, fear, and an unyielding will, stoked by the fragile hope Layla's presence ignited. He lowered his gaze to the child, who clung silently, her wide eyes shimmering with a mixture of innocence and strength that betrayed the shadows they'd endured. "I won't let you touch them," the Sheikh declared with brutal clarity. "Not now, not ever." A cold laugh escaped Kareem's lips, sharp as shattered glass. "You're outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and blinded by your desperation. The court whispers faster than the desert wind. Secrets that have long been buried are clawing their way back to the surface." The woman's eyes flickered with a flash of defiance, meeting the challenge with the courage of 1,000 battles fought alone. "Then we fight back, together." The words settled between them like a fragile truce. Unspoken promises forming under the weight of shared pain and uncertain futures. The Sheikh's breath hitched, every instinct primal and raw, tethered now not to power or pride, but to a family he had never dared to dream of protecting. Suddenly, the marble floor beneath them seemed to hum with the thin threads of intrigue tightening invisibly around the palace. Whispers of servants, courtiers, and spies tangled with the shimmering light, playing off golden pillars, creating an atmosphere thick with deception and expectation. The Sheikh caught a subtle exchange of glances from shadowed figures behind heavy curtains, eyes watching, calculating, details missed by all but the most vigilant. His grip on the photograph tightened, the paper nearly crumpling against his palm. "I will expose the truth," he vowed quietly, the promise cutting through the silence like a blade. "No matter the cost." The woman's gaze softened, a fleeting vulnerability, revealing a shared burden. "Then I will stand by your side. For Layla, for what's left of us." Layla shuffled between them, her small hand slipping into the Sheikh's, a delicate tether in the storm. His heart thundered, the precious weight of responsibility settling like molten gold within his chest. But Kareem was not defeated. His eyes flashed dangerously, voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You think this changes the rules? The desert has no mercy for those who walk blindly. Your past is your poison." As Kareem stepped back, the palace doors groaned open once more. A tall figure emerged, cloaked in shadow, but unmistakable in his authority. His presence sent a ripple of unease through the room, silencing even the whispers of the guards. The Sheikh recognized him immediately. A trusted advisor, whose loyalty had been a constant question mark. A wild card in the Game of Thrones. "He's come with news," Kareem hissed, body tense. "News that will force your hand, Sheikh." The advisor's eyes locked onto the Sheikh with measured calm, but the muscle tightening in his jaw betrayed the gravity of the message carried. With a subtle nod, he extended a folded parchment, the ink barely dried, the seal broken, but the message clear. The Sheikh unfolded the letter, eyes scanning the text with growing alarm. The signature at the bottom was unmistakable, an order from the highest seat of power, ordering immediate action against those whom the sheikh held dear. The woman gasped softly, stepping forward, voice trembling with dread and determination. "They're moving against us. Now." A fierce energy surged through the sheikh's veins, the room tilting on the axis of impending war. His eyes found hers, burning, with an unspoken vow. "We will not run this time. Not from the past. Not from these ghosts." Layla, sensing the charged silence, whispered his name, simple, pure, a beacon pulling at his scattered soul. The sheikh bent down slowly, drawing her close, the weight of his promise crystallized in that quiet embrace. Outside, the desert night deepened, winds wailing like lost souls against the palace walls. Inside, shadows lengthened and secrets stirred. The billionaire sheikh stood at the precipice of ruin and redemption, his world torn between the glittering gold of power and the fragile light of love. And as the courtyard gates slammed shut behind the closing footsteps of the emissary, a whispered threat echoed in his ears. "The war has begun, and this time it will consume us all." The crimson envelope, folded carefully in the billionaire sheikh's palm, seemed to pulse with an unspoken threat, its weight heavier than any treasure he had ever possessed. Kareem's cold, victorious smile sliced through the gilded air, yet beneath the sheikh's composed facade, a storm churned. The grand lobby's splendor felt suddenly suffocating. No longer a throne room, but a cage lined with shadows of past sins and looming betrayal. Layla's small hand trembled in the woman's grasp, the girl's wide eyes darting between the powerful men like a frightened animal caught in an invisible net. Her breath hitched, the faint scent of wild jasmine from the palace gardens barely cutting through the thick tension. The woman's grip tightened around her daughter, a silent vow in every fiber of her being, protection at any cost. "Why now, Kareem?" the sheikh demanded, his voice low but sharp as broken glass. "What reason could you have for unearthing ghosts that should have been buried?" Kareem stepped forward, the polished leather of his shoes echoing against the marble floor like a countdown to reckoning. "You built your empire on the veil of forgotten truths, Sheikh. But even the deepest lies fracture under the desert sun." His eyes flicked toward the woman and child. "This photograph is only the beginning. Soon all will unravel." A faint gasp slipped from the woman's lips, the sound almost swallowed by the vastness of the lobby. Her eyes blazed, poised between exhaustion and fierce defiance. "Don't think for a second that Layla is a weapon you can wield. She belongs to no one but us." The sheikh's chest tightened, a fire ignited deep beneath a lifetime of frozen control. That small girl, this fragile ember of his past and future, was the only truth left worth fighting for. Memories crashed like waves against hidden reefs, whispered promises beneath star-studded skies, laughter shattered by betrayal, the cold absence of goodbye. "I won't let you touch them," he said, voice low and resolute. "Not now, not ever." Kareem's laugh was a cruel gust of wind blowing through a desert ruin. "You're blinded by desperation, Sheikh. The court whispers with every passing moment. Secrets that you thought sealed away are clawing their way back to the surface." The woman's eyes narrowed like desert hawks locking on prey. "Then let them come. We will fight together. That single sentence hung in the air, fragile yet unbreakable, forging a silent pact beneath the golden chandeliers and the watchful gaze of portraits long faded into dust. The sheikh's breath trembled, yet his gaze steadied. His fortress of power was crumbling, but in its place something new, fragile, vulnerable, but real, was stirring. He lowered himself, bending to meet Layla's eyes. The girl's gaze shimmered with a fierce light, as though the desert sun had been distilled just for her. "My name is Hassan," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "And I will protect you." Layla's fingers slipped into his, a fragile thread binding father and daughter that no force could easily sever. But Kareem was not finished. He stepped back, eyes flashing with dark triumph, and from beneath his coat drew a slender scroll sealed with ebony wax, an official decree marked with the royal crest, a sentence written with the weight of monarchs. "This," he hissed, "is an order that will turn your world to ash, Sheikh. The throne commands swift justice against those you hold dear. There is no mercy in power, only its price." The Sheikh's fingers curled around the scroll, heart pounding like a drum, thrumming through the desert night. His eyes met the woman's, where fear flickered alongside determination. They both understood. The walls that once protected them now threatened to suffocate. "The palace conspires against us," she murmured, voice brittle but fierce. "They call us traitors, but I will stand with you, for Layla, for what little family we have left." Suddenly, the air shifted. The faint echo of footsteps multiplied, heavy and resolute, as palace guards with faces etched in duty appeared, cordoning off the grand hall. Intrigue thickened like desert sand caught in a rising storm. Hassan straightened, his iron and pleading. "No more shadows, no more lies. This family, our future, will not be buried beneath fear." The woman touched his hand, the faintest tremor betraying the battle warring within her. "Then we fight as one." Beyond the towering windows, the desert wind howled, wild and relentless against the stone, carrying tales of battles past and those yet to come. Somewhere, Layla's soft breath synchronized with the rhythmic pulse of hope, blossoming in the heart of chaos. But just as the fragile alliance seemed to solidify, a whisper of movement drew Hassan's sharp gaze to the far corridor. A figure emerged from shadow, tall, cloaked in mystery, bearing the unmistakable air of a messenger from the highest echelons of power. Kareem's lips curled into a vicious grin. "More news awaits. Sheikh, news that will shatter your last illusions." The stranger's eyes locked onto Hassan with cold precision. In his hand, a sealed letter, stamped with the emblem of the ruling council, a message that carried the weight of doom. Hassan's heart hammered. The war was no longer distant. It had arrived. And as the echoes of approaching footsteps filled the marble palace, a chilling thought crystallized in his mind. In this game of thrones and secrets, trust might be the deadliest gamble of all. Because with a slow, deliberate motion, the stranger unfolded the letter, and Hassan's world tipped on the edge of a knife, teetering between salvation and total collapse. The crumbling silence stretched taut between them, the embossed parchment clenched tightly in Hassan's hand, as though the fragile paper alone could hold back the tempest gathering outside and within. His gaze met the woman's, a fierce, silent vow passed no longer through words, but through the weight of all they had suffered and all they dared hope to reclaim. Layla, small and still trembling, found strength in the presence of men whose lives were riddled with unseen wars. The echoes of footsteps faded momentarily, leaving the grand lobby suffocated in a hush heavier than the marble pillars soaring overhead. The golden chandeliers cast fractured light, splintered like the fragile peace between allies standing side by side against a gathering storm. Hassan's eyes drifted to Karim, the living embodiment of betrayal's venom, whose cold smirk whispered promises of ruin. "This ends tonight," Hassan said softly, the steel beneath his voice barely veiled. "No scheme, no whisper in shadows will touch them." Karim's lips twitched with malice, but he said nothing, an unspoken agreement that words were weapons better wielded sparingly amid the rising tension. The woman stepped forward, her slender hand gripping Layla's tightly. Her eyes, bold and unyielding, pierced Hassan's. "We won't be pawns in their game," she pledged, a tremor betraying the fierce love fueling her every breath. "Not anymore." Hassan saw the faintest cracks in her armor, glimpses of the countless nights spent fighting alone beneath a sky indifferent to pain and dreams. Yet now, with him, the weight of loneliness eased, only just. Steps approached again, this time slower, more deliberate, and a murmur rose from the ranks of palace guards, forming a silent cordon around the intruders. They whispered of orders carried in sealed letters, of destinies written by hands unseen but merciless. The woman's gaze flickered to the guards and then back to Hassan. "The throne is closing in. They don't want a family here. Our very existence threatens the honor they crave." Hassan's jaw clenched. The luxury surrounding him, velvet drapes, golden inlaid tables, polished floors, felt now like a gilded prison, the beauty masking the enormity of their peril. He clenched his fists, feeling the subtle tremor of adrenaline sharpen his senses. "Years ago, I ruled with iron will," he admitted quietly, "but that power without them was hollow." His hand brushed Layla's hair with gentle care, a promise etched in the softness of the gesture. The door behind Karim creaked open, revealing a silhouette framed by torchlight, another player emerging from the depths of the palace shadows. The newcomer's presence sucked the remaining air from the room, an invisible force bending the will of every soul inside. Hassan's breath stalled. Recognition flared, sharp and unwelcome. "The council sends its envoy," Karim sneered, a knife edge of triumph in his voice, "to finalize the judgment against you." The envoy stepped forward with slow precision, clad in dark robes embroidered with threads of silver. His eyes bore cold intelligence and an unyielding resolve. In his hand, he held a sealed scroll, the royal edict writ clear and unshakable. Hassan's chest tightened with the weight of it. "This is not a plea," the envoy said, voice low and unwavering, "but a decree. You stand accused of treason." Their souls. Layla's eyes flickered between the men, wide with the innocence of a child who glimpses the fractures in the fortress meant to keep her safe. "I will not run," Hassan declared, standing taller amidst the crumbling certainty. "We will meet this storm, no matter the cost." His words trembled against the cold surrounds, but carried the strength of a man who had lost much and fought back harder still. The palace seemed to lean in, listening. Curtains fluttered gently on unseen breezes, echoes of the ancient stones, whispering old betrayals and new conflicts yet to ignite. Kareem's grin deepened, the shadow of secrets heavy behind his eyes. You believe loyalty binds stronger than ambition? Watch as the tides shift, Sheikh. Power is as fleeting as the desert winds. Hassan turned to the woman, his eyes softening. We will be the storm that rewrites all of this. Together. For a fleeting moment, the gold-flecked splendor faded into insignificance. Only the fragile knot of love, blood, and redemption remained. Then, like a dagger slowly twisting in a wound, a new dread surfaced. From the envoy's robe, he withdrew a small box, dark wood, carved with symbols known only to the highest echelons. The air thickened as he extended it toward Hassan. Within lies the evidence, the envoy intoned, eyes unblinking. Proof that will destroy what little trust remains. Proof that binds your fate and theirs. The woman's breath caught as a wave of realization rippled across her face. Layla clutched her tighter, a silent plea for strength. Hassan's fingers hesitated over the box, sensing the trap concealed beneath its polished surface. The room held its breath. With slow resolve, Hassan lifted the lid. Inside lay a ring, ancient, ornately designed, bearing a crest unmistakable. The mark of a forbidden union, a secret pact never spoken aloud. The envoy's voice pierced the charged silence. This is the key to unraveling your legacy, and the harbinger of ruin for the family you seek to protect. Hassan's vision blurred. The ring sparked memories buried deep, shadowed meetings, whispered promises, betrayals sweetened by love and sealed by blood. A cold chill raced down his spine. The woman stepped closer, fear and fierce defiance mingling in her gaze. They want to destroy us properly this time, she said, voice trembling but fierce. But if they think this will break us, they mistake desperation for surrender. Hassan's hand found hers, fingers intertwining in a silent vow. No longer just a man and a fallen princess, but a family rebuilt from the ruins. Outside, the desert wind howled like a beast at the gates, the sands shifting with the promise of upheaval. And within the golden cage, beneath chandeliers dripping with light, the billionaire sheikh understood that his empire was no longer measured in gold or power, but in the fragile, unbreakable bond he would guard with his life. Because the war for their future was no longer just whispered in shadows. It was about to roar into blinding daylight. And as the echoes of approaching footsteps grew louder, Hassan's heart pounded with one stark certainty. The greatest betrayal was yet to come, one that would shatter the very foundation of everything he held dear. The delicate silver hands of the clock in the grand hall moved almost mockingly slow as Hassan folded the ancient ring back into the box. The weight of its promise and its curse pressed deep into his chest, mingling with the heat of the palace's ornate torches that flickered against marble walls, adorned with stories of conquest, now dwarfed by his own unraveling legacy. He met the woman's eyes, her fierce glare still shielded by a layer of exhaustion and resolve. Layla clung to her skirts, trembling but resolute, as though sensing that these moments bore the weight of a lifetime. The presence of the envoy, the decree, Kareem's malevolent grin, they all painted a battlefield far beyond what Hassan had ever imagined. A breathless silence stretched, broken only by the faint chime of water spilling from the distant fountains, as if the palace itself mourned the fragility that now gripped its master. "We cannot falter," Hassan finally spoke, his voice low but unwavering, the steel beneath as sharp as the desert air outside. "They seek to dismantle what little family remains, to cleanse the throne of any threat, even one born of love." The woman nodded, her hand tightening over Layla's. "And yet, love is the fiercest rebellion. They may try to erase us, but they will find no victory here." Kareem's shadowy figure remained poised, his smirk widening, savoring the tightening noose. "You underestimate the crown's reach, Hassan. The edict is not mere words. It's a decree of death for defiance. Your claim, your alliances, they will crumble before the will of the council." A flicker of rage ignited beneath the composure Hassan fought to maintain. Power and wealth had long defined him, but these tokens today felt meaningless against the betrayal permeating every inch of the gilded halls. His gaze fell to Layla, the daughter he'd never dreamed of, the spark that threatened to reignite his heart. "No decree will silence what I refuse to lose," he declared, stepping forward with a rising flame of defiance. "They forget that beneath the gold and silk beats a heart forged in desert storms and resilience. We will not yield." The woman's eyes softened for the first time, glimmers of hope punctuating her worn courage. "Together we can rewrite our fate." Layla's small hand slipped slowly into his, a fragile yet unbreakable thread, tethering them through uncertainty and fear. But even as their bond drew tighter, a sinister chill crept from the far end of the corridor. The distant footsteps of more palace guards echoed steadily, shadows lengthening with each passing second. Hassan's lips tightened into a grim line. This was no longer a quiet rebellion. It was an all-out siege. As the heavy doors creaked open again, the unmistakable presence of the royal inquisitor filled the frame. Cloaked in midnight robes, embroidered with silver threads that glinted under the candlelight, his cold eyes pierced through the gathered small family like a blade. His hand extended the sealed scroll, the crimson wax glistening tremor in her breath, betraying a terror she refused to voice aloud. Layla watched silently, her innocent gaze locking onto her father with a silent plea for protection. Hassan folded the scroll, stepping to face the inquisitor, eyes blazing with unwavering defiance. "You bring a sentence written without justice. But know this, this family stands firm, and I will wield every ounce of power I possess to fight with the fury of a desert tempest." The inquisitor's lips curled into something near a sneer. "Rebellion carries a price, Sheikh. The throne demands loyalty or extinction." Then, with a deliberate movement, the inquisitor revealed a folded parchment and slid it toward Hassan. The paper bore a map, detailed, precise, the layout of the palace and its hidden passages, the locations of allies, vulnerabilities, Kareem's victorious laugh echoed softly in the background. The crown's reach is long, Hassan. Even the deepest shadows hold no refuge. A heavy silence followed, the golden light seeming to dim as the enormity of betrayal settled like a shroud. For a moment, Hassan's formidable will wavered, haunted by memories of nights spent dreaming of a future with the woman by his side, and Layla's laughter filling these stone halls. The grandeur that once comforted now seemed to mock him with its cold indifference. He glanced toward the woman, their eyes locking in a surge of shared determination. Two warriors, unwilling to surrender the fragile hope their daughter embodied. Suddenly, Layla released a small breath and looked straight at Hassan, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm scared." A man who had ruled empires felt a crack inside, the armor around his heart faltering. He knelt before her, gathering her hands in his. "You are the light I will protect," he promised, voice thick with emotion. "No darkness, no decree will take you from me." Outside the palace, the desert wind howled like a relentless storm, rattling the ancient gates. Inside, the palace morphed once again, from a sanctuary to a war zone teetering on the edge of collapse. Hassan rose slowly, catching Kareem's eye with a fierce glare that burned away any illusions of mercy. "This battle is far from over," he said, voice low but charged, "and the throne will learn that the heart of a sheikh is not so easily broken." As the palace doors closed behind the inquisitor and his guards, a sudden distant sound crept through the grand hall, the soft, rhythmic tapping of a single high-heeled shoe. Hassan turned sharply. From the shadows emerged a figure draped in rich velvet, her eyes dark and unreadable. A cold smile curled on her lips. The woman's breath hitched. "You weren't expecting her, were you?" The small group froze, the air thickening with the weight of secrets newly unearthed. The newcomer stepped closer, and her voice dropped to a whisper that echoed like a curse. "She knows everything, and soon, so will the world." The chandelier light flickered ominously above, casting jagged shadows as the chamber held its breath. The war for Hassan's heart, his family, and the empire he fought to claim had just welcomed its deadliest player, and the night promised no mercy. The heavy weight of the sealed letter still pressed cold against Hassan's palm as he stood beneath the grand chandeliers, their golden light softened by the dusk pouring through the ornate windows. The palace felt transformed, no longer a fortress of solitude, but a crucible where past mistakes, present loyalties, and future hopes were forged anew. Beside him, she held Layla close, her eyes no longer just sharp and defiant, but now softened by a fragile trust that had taken root against all odds. The little girl's small hand still trembled in Hassan's, but it was steadied by the warmth flowing between them, a silent promise of protection that transcended any decree or threat. Kareem's smirk lingered like a bitter shadow in the back of their minds, but his threats now felt hollow against the unyielding resolve settling in Hassan's chest. No power granted by ancient thrones could sever the bond quietly blossoming here, between a father, a mother, and the daughter caught in the storm. Hassan broke the silence first, his voice steady and resolute. "They may send armies and emissaries, but they cannot break the strength we have rebuilt together." His gaze lifted to meet hers, the woman who had carried their shared burdens alone, who had risen from darkness with unshakable dignity. Our family is not a threat. It is a new legacy, one forged by love, truth, and unwavering courage. She nodded, her lips curving into a faint but genuine smile. We will walk this path side by side. No more shadows, no more running. Her fingers tightened around Layla's, who looked up at them both with a cautious hope that made Hassan's heart both ache and soar. The heavy footsteps of approaching guards echoed through the hall. But this time, the sound did not bring fear. Hassan straightened, the weight of his responsibilities balanced by the light of this fragile new beginning. "Let them come," he whispered. "We face them together." As the doors swung open once more, revealing the royal envoy bearing the sealed edict, Hassan stepped forward with calm authority. The envoy's eyes flickered with surprise at the unshaken determination burning in the billionaire's gaze. With a deliberate motion, Hassan accepted the scroll and broke its seal, reading aloud the accusations, the threats, the commands meant to destroy their unity. But now, those words rang hollow against the truth etched into his very soul. "You underestimate the power of what binds us," Hassan said quietly. "This family is not defined by politics or power plays. It is defined by love, sacrifice, and the courage to face the darkness together." The envoy's expression faltered, realizing this was no longer a man cloaked in lonely ambition, but one anchored in unbreakable bonds. With a curt nod, the envoy stepped back, a subtle acknowledgement that this battle was far from simple. Outside, the desert wind pressed against the towering palace walls, carrying with it the whispers of countless battles. But inside, beneath the golden light, a quieter storm raged, a storm of forgiveness, healing, and newfound hope. Later, in the tranquil gardens beyond the palace, Hassan knelt beside Layla, her eyes shining with the joy of a child finally seeing the promise of safety. He brushed back a stray lock of her hair with tender care. "You are my greatest victory," he murmured. "Not wealth, not power, but you." Her laughter, light and free, danced through the blooming jasmine and olive trees, symbols of peace growing where once there was only turmoil. The woman stood nearby, her gaze soft but fierce, the echoes of past sorrows replaced by the steady rhythm of shared dreams. "We fought for this moment," she said simply, "and now we build a future no one can take from us." Hassan rose, drawing them both into a quiet embrace under the pale moonlight. The palace, once a stage for betrayal and secrets, had become a sanctuary of healing and family. Days later, the court itself began to shift. Whispers of scandal and old vendettas gave way to cautious respect, as Hassan's unwavering stance and the undeniable presence of his family proved that strength was redefined, not by fear or isolation, but by connection and courage. He walked through the halls no longer alone, but accompanied by love that had weathered storms and emerged glorious. The golden chandeliers above seemed to shine brighter, reflecting a future reclaimed and radiant. In the quiet of the night, he stood by his window, overlooking the vast desert, the stars mirrored in his eyes. The past had tried to shatter him, but now, with his family beside him, Hassan knew true power was not in dominion or riches. It was in forgiveness granted, mistakes redeemed, and love that endured beyond all shadows. The billionaire sheikh's world was no longer a solitary throne. It was home. And as the first light of dawn stretched over the horizon, turning the desert gold, Hassan smiled, his heart finally at peace, ready to embrace the endless promise of a life reborn.